Well, hello and welcome to the Smells Like Money podcast. Join me, Suzan Chin Taylor, the DooDoo Diva, as I interview guests who are making an impact on how we manage and operate systems for conveying and treating wastewater. As a veteran of the wastewater, trenchless, and civil infrastructure industry, each week I'll be bringing you industry know-how from industry pros who know how. Join me each week as I speak with representatives of organizations that are utilizing disruptive or new technologies and methods, and executives who are excited to share how to be successful and sustainable in our vital industry. So whether you want to learn about the latest trends in technology, in treatment or trenchless, gain tips on training and retaining great talent, or simply how to be more efficient, productive, or profitable, this podcast is for you. Ready? Let's dive right in. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the DooDoo Divas Smells Like Money podcast. Today, we are visiting with Stephen Miller. I know you see that name spelled a little bit differently, but he corrected me because, I really would have botched that one up. And he is the director of marketing for RioVation. Now, this company caught my eye because they do something very unique, very innovative in the septic market or on-site wastewater. So many of us may think, well, like how innovative can a septic tank be? It's been like this, I guess you would say this same design for years and years and years. Yeah, we can make different materials. Yeah, we can increase it. Maybe we can put it in a different location. But RioVation has come up with something that is very unique. And I think very much worthwhile talking about, bringing and shedding some light on it, because I do see that it is going to solve a lot of problems that many cities and communities are facing, and even homeowners. We'll get into that conversation a little bit later. But, many people who are on septic systems found that during COVID, when more and more people were living and working at home, that the burden on their septic systems was really going through the roof, because let's just face it, most of us left to go to work during the day. Our children left to go to school. And so the septic tanks weren't being used. But now all of a sudden, all those hours of the day when we were typically using somebody else's system or a public system, now we're using a septic system. And we're putting an extra burden on this. And it created a whole host of problems. And so, Stephen, I really want you to kind of give us the history behind this so people kind of get an understanding on the concept of how what you're doing all came about, your founder's history, in the industry, and really what brought this idea forward, and how now something like this, because of what we've gone through with these many changes, nitrogen loading, all the whole host of things that are happening in our environment, where this is a concept who I truly believe, after learning about it, its time has come. And so with that, take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Suzanne. So a little bit on the backstory. Gig Drury is the gentleman that developed the product line. But he goes back in the industry to the early 80s, and he got introduced to the on-site wastewater industry, particularly the aerobic or ATU industry, in East Texas, when he built his first home in a neighborhood that had clay soils. And there was most of the homes were on septic system and straight piping into the ditch because it was the clay was impermeable. And he just thought that was totally unacceptable in today's, in the environment, in the world that we live in, especially in a developed country. So he did his research, found an aerobic treatment unit company, and he purchased one, although they were not legal to install in Texas in the 80s. It wasn't until 1994 that through Gig and others in the industry got aerobic treatment units finally legalized. So he installed one. The regulators turned a blind eye, made crystal clear water. So he talked to the manufacturer, the company, and said he wanted to be a distributor. So long story short, he ended up becoming a distributor in 84, 85, and sold those products in the Texas market, and then in the around 90 developed his own product line and tested through Baylor University, which later became one of the NSF test sites. And the product line was HydroAction, still in business today.
Okay.
He ended up getting out of that business, selling it out, and got out of the industry around 2000, early 2000s. But all along with his aerobic treatment unit days, he would go to conferences and seminars, and there would be extremely intelligent people, engineers, explaining how to site an on-site system. And they would always say that you need to have an alternate drain field, leach field location set aside, because when this one fails, you'll need to relocate. And he would raise his hand and say, why are we designing systems to fail? But the industry hasn't changed for all these, 20, 30 years. We're still putting in septics. Ultimately, the EPA says that a septic system, a drain field, has 15, 20 years of life expectancy. So about 6 years ago, he started thinking about this and thinking, we've got all these septic systems, 30 million systems in the US. About a third of the US population is served by on-site wastewater, most of which is septic. And he's like, we've got all these failures. There's got to be a way to fix it in the septic tank. So he developed the product, RioVation BioMaze, and you can see the pods back here. It goes into a septic tank and connects to a high blow XP80 air pump, and it converts it from septic to a fully aerobic system very simply, and all the benefits of any of the packaged ATU systems. And it, in fact, recovers failed drain fields. Purdue and University of West Virginia and others have researched it, produced white papers, and concluded, beyond a shadow of a doubt, aerobic treatment effluent introduced to a biomat failed drain field recovers them. And we've experienced it 100% of the time. So that's why GIG started down this road of developing this product.
So it's really ideally designed for, retrofitting into an existing system. Because I see this, for those who are just listening, there is a sign behind Stephen on top of his beautiful wooden file cabinet that says drain field repair with no excavation. And so I'd like for you to explain, what do you mean by that? Because most people are prepared that, like you were saying earlier, that if the drain field starts to fail, they're looking at digging up in a typical septic system, digging up and putting another one in somewhere else on the same property. And then I guess what happens with the failed one? That may seem like a silly question, but no. What happens with the failed one? I mean, yes, you're going to repipe it and move it. Do they just leave that?
They abandon it. They abandon it typically.
Okay, because but what happens? Do they pump it out? Do they pump it out and then just leave it there? Or
they just
let nature take its course?
They leave the septic, but they abandon the drain field. And if there's room on the lot, they move over to other area that's not been disturbed. It's been set aside for a new drain field, and they excavate, tear up the yard, tear up the landscaping, tear up the sod and the irrigation, and put in a new drain field and then all the yard work has to be repaired. So, and if they excavate, they have to. It's now really a hazardous biohazard. If they excavate the existing one and haul it off, and all the material and the contaminated soil, now you have to deal with that. So you have to be able to dispose of it somehow. So typically they just abandon. But with our process, we introduce high levels of dissolved oxygen into the septic tank, along with a fixed film media, a surface area for the microbes to populate on. So in an aerobic treatment process, there's really two ways of accomplishing aerobic treatment. One is fixed film media, and the other is suspended growth. So with suspended growth, you're mixing the entire tank. There's no surface area for the microbes to grow on. They flock together. They create clusters and really solids. And you have to have a settling chamber or a clarifier to settle out the solids and now allow the clean effluent to leave. But when we have fixed film media, the microbes naturally want to attach, and there are no solids in the tank. The entire tank is clear and odorless. There's no clarifier required. So we're producing high level of dissolved oxygen, and there are some microbes in suspension there, but they're not flocking. So they're just individual platonic or small colonized bacteria clusters that are microscopic. Some of that gets pushed out to the biomat failed drain field, and it consumes the biomat and cleans it back up and allows it to begin function almost immediately. We've had completely failed systems within 7 days functioning.
Come back and function. So it really can rescue something where they are maybe looking at a large price tag to have to redo the whole thing. And one thought crossed my mind is, what if you're in an area, or what if you have a lot that, because of maybe part of the lot is rock or bedrock or high water table? What if there isn't a spot to put a new drain field?
Yeah. So we actually just received an order today for 4 of our units that are going to be put into a larger flow school with 350 pupils and 28 staff. And it's a 3,000 gallon tank. So it's a larger flow. So we're putting 4 of our units in it to provide enough treatment. If they would have to excavate and tear out trees and put in a new drain field, that was going to be in excess of 100,000. Our cost is just a fraction of that. It's unbelievable, the difference. Just a fraction of that cost with no excavation to repair it.
Now, these cages, I think they look like, crab cages or whatnot, or, some type of, or I've seen other cages. You know what it almost looks like? Almost like a bird seed cage for, when you put larger things that are those squirrel proof.
Yeah.
The squirrel proof bird cages, for those of you who are just listening, that is what is sitting on the other side of Stephen on the table. And it's a very unique looking, piece of hardware. It does. It almost looks like one of those squirrel proof bird cages, but of course there's no bottom and no top on it. So take us through, Stephen, how, what are the components of this that go into the system, into an existing system? What does it take as far as timeline? What does an asset owner or homeowner or property owner have to be prepared for the installation? Will it disrupt? How long does it take to put that in? And, you already said earlier about when they can start seeing results, but what kind of power is required? And basically, what are all the components and what does it take and what should they expect?
Yeah. Thank you for that. Appreciate the question. So this is the fixed film media. It's in the form of an 8-inch diameter cage. So it's 8-inch diameter, 26 inches tall, and it's weighted at the bottom so that it will stay floating in suspension. You drop the pod into the tank, and there's a tether line. This gets uncoiled. The line gets uncoiled and tied off inside the riser. And then the pod floats just below the surface, just 2 inches below the surface. And that's the surface area for the microbes to populate on. And because it's only 8-inch diameter, it can go into many openings, many riser lids, whether, 24-inch, 20, 18-inch diameter lid. It's not a problem for our pods to go in because of the diameter. So they drop in, they float, and then one or more of the pods will have a fine air diffusion assembly to it. So it's a ballast weight at the bottom to keep it, again, to offset the aeration that wants to float. Then the fine air stone diffusion, which is actually GIG's first patent from 1992 era, with hydroaction. That stone is extremely efficient at producing micro bubbles, fine air diffusion, and getting those bubbles into the oxygen saturated into the water. And then there's a hose that goes up and has a barbed 3/4 inch male fitting on it. And then that's what gets attached to a 3/4 inch PVC female adapter. And that goes to the air pump. So the air pump is in its own air pump housing, and with an integrated alarm package, it can set up to 100 feet away over by the house or an outbuilding, often where there's already an outlet, 110 outlet, and it simply plugs in, and then 3/4 PVC pipe between the air pump housing and the riser where the pods are mounted in that end of the tank, on the outlet end of the tank preferentially. So the air pump is an high blow XP80 pump, extremely efficient little pump, very quiet. It draws about 60 watts, the equivalent of a 60-watt light bulb.
Oh, wow.
So less than $10 a month to operate it. Extremely low maintenance and extremely long life expectancy, and years of life expectancy typically with them. Yeah, so the what's required to install it is access to the tank on the, at least on the outlet end of the tank. We prefer to have access to both ends of the tank, the inlet and the outlet. And again, whether it's a 1 or 2 compartment or multi-compartment, it really doesn't matter. We're seeing the same results in a 1 compartment with no trash tank or any pre-treatment, just into the 1 compartment of the tank. So access riser to the surface with a lid, of course, you know, that's in place so that it's not a safety issue.
Right.
And the pods simply lower in, they self-position and float, they tie off inside the riser. You connect up the PVC between the riser, the pods, and the air pump housing, and you plug it in, and you're done. So you pump the tank, clean it, fill it with water, hook up the pump, and plug it in. So it's usually
you do a pump out before you install this to prepare for it. And so that leads me to, you know, when you were saying about the microbiology or the microbes, are you adding microbes in, or is it just utilizing what is coming, like what comes inherently from us, the, gut bacteria?
Yeah, so it's a combination of gut bacteria and environmental bacteria. We do no bioaugmentation, as it's called, or seeding.
Okay.
We don't provide a microbial starter. And invariably, you might notice the microscope. I've got a microscope and started studying the microbes. You know, I'm not a trained microbiologist, but studying them in conjunction with publications and charts.
Right.
Tetra Tech has a wonderful chart of microbes. And invariably, we see a large selection, if not all, of the microbes on the Tetra Tech wastewater treatment microbe chart, and they're just natural. They're just naturally occurring. We provide the environment, the oxygen, the cage, the biofilm surface area for the biofilm to form on, and then they populate, and we provide them food through our waste.
So this leads me to when you say you want to pump your tank out to do this, and then putting this in place. So it's really changing the dynamics of how the septic tank actually works. And so here's the loaded question that might make some people uncomfortable, is this going to eliminate the need for pumping out or reducing the frequency to have to pump out? And how does it deal with, and the reason I'm asking this is because I have a sister-in-law who has the tank that was installed at the house that she bought was way, way too small for the needs of the house because of the area and having a very high water table. So I guess permits or whatnot, she cannot do laundry at her house because it would put too much liquid, the soaps, into the existing septic tank. So it would basically overload it, and she'd have to be pumping it out, like every 4 to 5 months. And so how would something like this address a situation like that, if it can, where it's too small of a tank for the needs of the property? Okay.
So yeah.
And also how does it deal with the chemicals that come in normally? when, the soaps, the fog, from just our showering, shampoos, soaps, detergents, or washing dishes that go into a
Right.
septic tank. How does it handle that?
Yeah. Yeah. So let's unpack all that. The first of all, the pump out intervals. Currently, we're recommending to the home maintain its normal pump out interval. So if it's 3 years, 5 years, we recommend a normal pump interval because, especially in a two compartment tank, we're treating the outlet end or the
Okay.
secondary compartment, and the first compartment's considered a trash tank or pre-treatment, and it's going to collect more sludge and solids
Right.
over the time. So we would recommend regular pump intervals, although we are seeing some sludge degradation or consumption in the treatment end of the tank. So it is minimizing the amount of sludge produced or that is in the treatment
Right.
compartment. Now, and the reason we say we want to pump it and clean the tank is because we are changing the total function of that tank. It's no longer a septic tank. We want to start it just like you would an aerobic treatment unit. So just like
Okay.
that's a brand new tank, and now we're putting an aerobic treatment unit into that tank and filling it with water like you would a normal ATU startup.
Okay.
We want it to be just like a new tank with an
Hmm.
aerobic treatment process in it. Now, on a smaller tank, we've Gig reluctantly allowed me to have one of these installed through with a contractor on a 500-gallon one compartment tank. Now, granted, there were only two people, but two adults in the home full time. It was an efficiency apartment on a person's property,
Okay.
and it was struggling. It was backing up. We installed it in a 500-gallon tank with no pretreatment, and we started it up and went back and looked in 1 month. It looked like tap water coming out of the tank, and it was running
Wow.
normal level. So yes, it does. It does such a good job of consuming all the waste. We're treating 90+% of the waste in the tank. So there's very little treatment that has to take place into the soil. Now it's dispersal of the
Right.
effluent into the soil. So and it's very efficient. It perks extremely well in a variety of soil types. Now, the chemicals and so forth, just like with any aerobic treatment process, you want to minimize the amount of harsh cleaners and antimicrobials. Different products that are high in antimicrobial properties, you got to use them sparingly, and that doesn't matter whether it's our product or anyone else's.
Hmm.
Although fixed film media, if you look at the medical industry, there's not that much research done on biofilm of attached biofilm microbes. Um, or, Losing my thought, but the
Okay.
attached um, bacteria, they colonize and form a they call it an irreversible attachment on surfaces. And the reason the medical industry is researching it is because of hip and joint replacements, heart valves, things of that nature. They grow biofilm, and people have real issues with it. And the
Mm.
medical industry has determined that biofilm is between 500 and 5,000 times more resistant to antibiotics than free floating single cell platonic bacteria. So
Interesting.
our attached growth is much more resilient and much more resistant to chemical upset than suspended growth is.
Hmm.
It's much more tolerant. And so we have them installed in homes. We've got multiple single compartment installations with 4 or 5 adults in the home doing laundry and washing hair and using products. And there's no surface floating scum, and the water's crystal clear. You can do a grab sample and it looks like tap water coming out of the tank. It's remarkable.
So that to me says that it's going to reduce or almost maybe mitigate. I don't like to say the word eliminate, but mitigate a lot of the issues that cities are, oh, we've got to get off of septic because of the nitrogen loading, because it's affecting the watershed. And
Mhm.
so I guess my question is this something that can address that issue where perhaps instead of having to do that conversion, because there are a lot of small cities that can't bring people onto public sewer, or putting in what you were saying, a traditional, like a small footprint package plant for like a small grouping of homes, because it becomes economically, it's just not feasible. They need to do something about it. So do you see this as a potential solution to those types of problems?
Very much so. So, and it's not just communities. It's people in the rural areas. For instance, in
Right.
Florida, 60% of Florida is considered BMAP, and that's biologically sensitive areas that need to be protected.
Right.
And Florida just this year, this session, passed a House Bill 1379 that requires 65% or greater nitrogen reduction on any new installation on 1 acre or less. That's pretty significant. And there's not that many units that can boast 65% nitrogen reduction or more in the tank. And they can get some credits through drain fields. So they do some treatment, reduction of nitrogen in the tank, and then an additional allowance for reduction in the soil to meet the 65%. Now with ours, we've just been doing our own testing through certified labs, not an official test, but in multiple installations, we see not only full nitrification, which is the first step of denitrification, but we're seeing between 40 and 65% denitrification through what's called simultaneous nitrification denitrification. And that's been studied where you're in an aerobic environment with a fixed film that gets quite thick. The biofilm on the surface area gets quite thick. The outer layers have access to oxygen, but the inner layers of the biofilm are oxygen deprived, so it becomes anoxic. And in that anoxic environment with the presence of nitrate, the microbes will utilize the oxygen moles off of the nitrate and allow it to denitrify and gas off to atmosphere where it's harmless. So we're seeing a substantial denitrification, and we are just in the process of starting an official test on denitrification. So we'll be doing the industry standard with recirculation back to the first compartment for the carbon source.
Wow. And so, just in reviewing this, I'm seeing an opportunity here as well, because those who are in the industry that are pumping or installing, is that why not include one of these on a new install? Why not offer this as something when you come out and do whenever, how often frequent that you're pumping, or doing just a service call, preventative maintenance on a system. And so for those who are in the industry of either pumping or septic installation, how can they learn more about this technology, get in touch with you? How is this product, how is this product going to be brought into the market? How can people access it? Is it through, distributors, installers only? Can homeowners buy it directly? Because it seems like it'd be pretty complex for a homeowner to try to maybe install it themselves. And so maybe address that. And if somebody's interested, how can they move forward with accessing or just getting more information?
Yeah, thank you. So our Gig originally, when he developed the product, his intention was to go to direct to consumer. He came from the professional market, developing professional products and dealing with dealers and installers, but he really just wanted to keep it small and go to the homeowner. Right. But there were SEO issues, to get ranking and exposure, and then now you've got tech calls with homeowners. Right. Every sale is going to be a new tech requirement. And so after we talked about it, I encouraged him, and we discussed and came to an agreement that we would go back to the professional market with the product. So we go directly to the professional market. It's not available to the homeowner, and we do so through e-commerce. So our website, RioVation.com, R-I-O-V as in Victor, A-T-I-O-N.com. So our website, it has our products. You won't see any pricing, but there's a wealth of information about the product. And if you want more information, you can reach out to us through the professional installer account request, which is just a professional login. Once we approve that, confirm that you're an installer, talk with the installer, and then we can give them access, and they can see the pricing and actually purchase the product. We also have a lot of information on YouTube, our RioVation YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search RioVation. You'll find our channel with quite a number of videos, including an animated explainer video geared toward the homeowner so they can understand it. And then also very active on LinkedIn, and we have quite a bit of information posting there as well.
That's great. Well, again, Stephen, thank you for coming on the show, sharing all the great information about this new technology, because everybody knows I love new tech, and I love showcasing it on the show whenever I can. And to me, I think this is exciting. I think this is something that is going to solve a lot of problems that to many may feel, overwhelming, financially daunting. How am I going to do this? And, so again, thank you for sharing it. Thank you to, what was it? Is your founder's name Gig? Is that how you pronounce it? Yeah.
Gig.
Bringing this to market and taking a shot with this and making it available. And please reach out if you're interested in getting more information, as he stated here on the video, but it'll also be in the show notes here on the episode. And thank you for tuning in, everybody. And I hope you found this fascinating and enjoyable. And maybe thinking, maybe I need to delve into this a little bit further and see how I could use it for my business. And so until next time, thank you for tuning in and keep it flowing. Thanks so much for joining me, the DooDoo Diva, on this week's episode of Smells Like Money. What stood out to you this week? Share your takeaways by leaving me a review. You can find out more about the new technologies, creating sustainable solutions, and insights on how to succeed in our vital industry by subscribing to the show. Whether you want to learn about the latest trends in wastewater infrastructure, treatment, or trenchless, you've got it all right here at Smells Like Money. If you're an industry expert and would like to be considered as a guest for the show, book a quick chat with me by visiting calendly.com/the2it group/B-A-podcast-guest, or simply click the link in the show notes below. Until next week, a big shout out to all my industry friends and those who will be. You are my superheroes. Thanks for tuning in, keeping it flowing, and we'll see you all next week.